Have you ever heard of the Giving Pledge? It's a pledge which many of the world's wealthiest business people have signed, which promises that they will give away at least half of their total wealth. People like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos have all signed it. One thing I know you have never heard of is the guy who inspired the pledge, Chuck Feeney, a man so focused on giving that he insisted donators should give away all of their wealth while they were still alive. And to prove he was serious, he did it himself. And I'm going to tell you his story. Chuck Feeney made his staggering fortune by co-founding Duty-Free Shoppers, the sprawling luxury retail empire that you see in every major airport all over the world, selling millions of dollars of designer handbags, fine liquor, and Swiss watches every single hour. But Feeney himself wore a $15 Casio watch and flew economy. He insisted on using plastic bags to carry his documents, and he lived in a modest, rented apartment in San Francisco. He never wanted the spotlight. In fact, he spent 40 years running away from it. His life was dedicated to a single radical idea: giving while living. And he didn't just give away some of his wealth. He didn't just, donate 100 grand or a few million. He gave away all of it. Over $8 billion, more than 10 times his net worth at its peak. And his mission was simple: die broke. And in 2020, at the age of 89, he succeeded in becoming the James Bond of philanthropy, the billionaire who gave it all away without anyone knowing that he did it, not even his business partner. Chuck Feeney's story is rooted in the quintessential American dream, but with a profoundly Irish-American work ethic. Born in Elizabeth, New Jersey in 1931 during the height of the Great Depression, Feeney learned the value of a dollar fast. He was selling Christmas cards door to door at 10 years old and shoveling snow for quarters. His education was a game changer. After serving as a US Air Force radio operator during the Korean War, he was able to attend Cornell University on the GI Bill, which was a government program designed to help veterans reintegrate into society after military life. This period left two indelible marks on him: a lifelong appreciation for the transformative power of education and the habit of relentless entrepreneurialism. At Cornell, he earned the nickname the Sandwich Man. To make extra money, he would slap some bologna between two slices of bread and sell them to hungry students in between classes who didn't have time to go to the canteen. It was during this time that he met a classmate, Robert Warren Miller, a man with a similarly sharp business mind and an eye for luxury. After graduating, Feeney stayed connected to the military world. In the late 1950s, he noticed a critical loophole while catering to the US Navy sailors docked in the Mediterranean. These servicemen could buy alcohol and cigarettes duty-free when they were in international waters, but the process was kind of clunky. Feeney and Miller saw the opportunity. They started buying duty-free liquor in Europe and then selling it to American servicemen passing through ports. It was a simple, genius mechanism: identify a consumer group with money and a legal way to avoid paying taxes. This concept laid the groundwork for Duty-Free Shoppers, co-founded in 1960. But the real money, the massive, life-changing fortune, came from looking east. In 1964, the Japanese government began allowing its citizens to travel internationally, and they were eager to spend. Feeney and Miller secured an exclusive license for duty-free sales in Hawaii, targeting the wave of affluent Japanese tourists making their first trips abroad. The key was convenience and presentation. DFS was no longer just about liquor and cigarettes. It became the destination for luxury goods, designer leather, high-end watches, and jewelry, and all sold by a multilingual staff who understood the Asian tourist market. It wasn't about saving customers money anymore. Now, they were selling an American luxury experience to tourists who were able to experience America's culture of excess for the very first time. DFS expanded across Asia, Hong Kong, Guam, Saipan, and became a multi-billion-dollar retail behemoth. By the early 1980s, Chuck Feeney was a global titan of commerce. He was traveling the world and living out of a simple suitcase and watching his share of DFS balloon into an untouchable, unimaginable fortune. $1 billion fortune way before being a billionaire was even really a thing in pop culture. But the more money that he made, the more uncomfortable he became. Feeney was inspired by Andrew Carnegie's 1889 essay, The Gospel of Wealth, which argued that the man who dies rich dies disgraced. Feeney realized that the ultimate business challenge wasn't in making the money, it was figuring out how to spend it effectively. And in 1984, Feeney made a decision that fundamentally redefined his life and eventually philanthropy itself. In 1984, Chuck Feeney secretly transferred his entire 38.75% stake in duty-free shoppers, a stake which was conservatively valued at around $500 million back in the 80s, which would eventually be worth billions in the future. And he transferred it to a foundation that he established 2 years earlier in Bermuda, and he named it the Atlantic Philanthropies. This was an act of financial and philosophical audacity that was quite literally unprecedented. No one had ever done this before. Feeney didn't set up a trust fund for his children. He didn't even tell his business partner, Robert Miller, that he no longer owned any part of the company. Feeney just transferred his entire wealth, apart from about $2 million set aside from his wife and family. He was officially a wealthy man who was technically completely broke. And the core principle of Atlantic Philanthropies was anonymity. For the next 15 years, Feeney operated under a code of absolute silence. If Atlantic made a grant, and these were massive grants, the recipient organizations were required to sign legally binding non-disclosure agreements forbidding them from ever revealing the source of the donation. Now, this wasn't modesty, it was strategy. Feeney's rationale for this intense secrecy was multifaceted. First, humility. He genuinely believed that if a building was named after him, another donor would be less likely to donate, preferring their own name on the plaque instead. And he wanted to use his money to leverage other people's money. And he felt that by remaining anonymous, the focus stayed on the cause and not on the person receiving the credit. The second reason was efficacy. As an anonymous donor, he could show up unannounced at universities, research centers, or hospitals. He could fly economy class wearing simple clothes and observe how his money was being spent. He would get honest feedback and unfiltered insights that a famous public billionaire would never receive, because, everybody kisses the ass of public billionaires. He could act quickly and without the bureaucratic delay that usually plagues large foundations. Third and finally, Feeney's mission was giving while living. He wrote, "I cannot think of a more personally rewarding and appropriate use of wealth than to give while one is living, to personally devote oneself to meaningful efforts to improve the human condition." He believed that money went to work faster and the donor got to see the results when it was done in this method. Atlantic Philanthropies was engineered to be the most efficient giving machine in history. They weren't interested in legacy funds or endowments designed to last forever. The whole point was that it was a limited life foundation. In 2002, the board formally announced that they would spend down the entire fortune and close their doors by 2020. This commitment to zero out its balance sheet within the founder's lifetime was another radical departure from traditional philanthropy, which generally tends to focus on maintaining itself and in many cases growing itself, which can attract the wrong type of people who just think of it as a tax vehicle or easy money. Feeney's life reflected this total commitment to charity. He drove a simple, modest car. He flew coach, he wore off-the-rack clothing, and he shared a deep passion for finding the absolute best deals. Even on flights for his foundation staff, nobody, not even the executives, flew business or first class. Everybody flew coach. This discipline was legendary. He wasn't just wealthy, he was wealthy enough to buy anything that he wanted, and yet he chose to live like an ordinary guy. This stealth operation earned him the nickname the James Bond of philanthropy. But as with many secrets, it couldn't last forever. In 1996, Feeney and his partner Robert Miller had a major dispute over the sale of DFS to the French luxury conglomerate Louis Vuitton. The ensuing legal battle demanded financial transparency, and in 1997, the bombshell dropped. The New York Times ran a front-page story. He gave away $600 million and nobody knew. The secret was out, but for Feeney, it was really just the midpoint of his journey, and while his cover was blown, he accelerated his mission to zero out his finances. Once anonymity was no longer an option, Feeney realized that he had a new role, a public model for giving while living philosophy. The money, now totally transparent, was deployed with surgical precision across 8 geographic focus areas and 5 core fields of interest. Those were aging, children and youth, population health, human rights, and education. His giving was characterized by what his foundation called big bets. That's large catalytic grants designed not just to fund a project, but to transform an entire sector. Let's take a look at the incredible scale of his work. Feeney, whose grandparents hailed from County Fermanagh, sorry Irish people if I'm saying that wrong, I really don't know how to say it, had a deep personal connection to Ireland, and his grants here were arguably his most consequential, particularly in bringing peace and modernizing the nation. He provided hundreds of millions of dollars to transform third-level education. The University of Limerick, for example, was an early and major beneficiary, receiving funding for libraries, cultural centres, and scientific facilities that helped to turn the institution into a world-class research centre. But his most sensitive work was in Northern Ireland. Feeney provided funding for both Catholic and Protestant universities, backing integrated education and reconciliation projects. Crucially, he made secret grants to groups involved in the peace process, including a pretty controversial $200,000 to Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, conditional on the IRA maintaining a ceasefire. And this quiet strategic funding, working behind the scenes, provided crucial leverage that many historians believe played a role in paving the way for the 1998 Good Friday Agreement. Feeney invested in peace so effectively that he saw the direct, tangible results in his own lifetime. Feeney's gratitude for the GI Bill meant that he always saw education as the great accelerator. His alma mater, Cornell University, received nearly $1 billion over his lifetime. The crown jewel of this giving was a $350 million grant to kickstart the Cornell Tech campus on Roosevelt Island in New York City. This was a classic Feeney big bet. It wasn't just a donation, it was a foundational investment that helped New York City transform itself into a competitive global tech hub, creating thousands of jobs and generating billions in economic activity. He also provided over $270 million to the University of California in San Francisco to fund state-of-the-art medical and science buildings, including the Mission Bay Medical Center. Again, he didn't just write a check. He used his money to encourage government funding and corporate partnerships, multiplying his initial investment many times over. Feeney used the Atlantic Philanthropies to tackle some of the world's toughest structural problems. In Vietnam, Atlantic spent 14 years not just building hospitals, but overhauling the entire public health system, training a new generation of primary care physicians and modernizing infrastructure after decades of war. In South Africa, after apartheid, Feeney channeled significant funds into public health initiatives and, crucially, human rights initiatives too. In the United States, Atlantic became one of the largest funders of advocacy for progressive causes, including $76 million to grassroots campaigns supporting the passage of the Affordable Care Act, for example, and substantial grants to organizations working to end the death penalty. Feeney was comfortable making grants that were political and controversial because he saw the root cause of all of these issues as systemic inequality, and he wanted to fix the systems and not just alleviate the symptoms. He was a man who preferred to buy a new $5 pair of glasses over having an expensive meal, but had no hesitation writing a $100 million check if he saw the chance to save thousands of lives. His approach was ruthless, analytical, and deeply humanitarian. His foundation didn't chase immediate fame, they chased permanent impact. Feeney's goal was to finish the job. When Atlantic Philanthropies announced in 2002 that they would officially close by 2020, they became a unique countdown clock for philanthropy. They weren't worried about preserving their brand, they were worried about deploying capital efficiently. In September 2020, at the age of 89, Chuck Feeney gathered his team for a final video conference call to sign all of the documents officially dissolving the Atlantic Philanthropies. The foundation's final $7 million, having distributed a total of $8 billion over 38 years, was gone. Zero. Nothing. Nada. The accounts were empty. The celebration was fittingly modest. A small Zoom call where a congratulatory message was played from one of his most important converts, Bill Gates. Feeney had not just given away his money, he had successfully run a philanthropic marathon with a finish line that few philanthropists dare to set. Actually, I don't think any other philanthropists set the same goal as Chuck Feeney, as to give away all of their wealth in their lifetime. He achieved his life's ambition. He died broke. He spent his final years with his wife Helga in that simple rented 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, still flying commercial, still askew in luxury. When asked about his modest living, he would simply say, "Why should I be the 10th richest person in the world when I can be the 10th brokest person in the world?" The impact of Chuck Feeney's life is perhaps greatest not in the billions that he gave away, but in the billionaires that he inspired to give away. In 2011, Feeney signed the Giving Pledge, the initiative started by Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates to encourage the world's wealthiest people to give away the majority of their wealth. Feeney was the 59th signatory, and they all admitted that he was their hero. He had been living the pledge for decades before it even existed. His legacy is an unshakable challenge to the world's elite. Wealth is not something to be hoarded or endlessly managed. It's a tool, a powerful asset that must be deployed now to solve the world's most pressing problems, while the person with the vision is still alive to see the work done. As Chuck Feeney himself often advised, if you give while living, the money goes to work quickly. Everyone gets to see the action and the results. That's what we're all about. Good fortune isn't about having a fortune. It's about making your fortune do good.